Hi there, folks. Sorry about that. We're just having a few technical problems here this morning. So I don't know whether it's my broadband or what's going on. So I'm going to keep the chat open, and you'll have to let me know if it's buffering too badly. Then we'll pause, and perhaps I'll try another time, but it's difficult to know whether it's my computer or the broadband or what's going on. So, hi Stuart, hi Teresa. So, we'll let everyone arrive. Here we go. Now let's. There we go. So that's a bit better. Yeah, so we'll just have to see what happens. But we've got quite a lot of work to get through, so we'll just have to see. Also, as I say, my Photoshop seemed a bit slow as well this morning, so let's have a look. So I'm gonna open the chat here. So yeah, I've got the chat hit. So just let me know, say, if it does start to buffer, and I'll just do my best. Okay, so hopefully everyone's okay. Yeah, or just make a start. Let's get stuck in Photoshop. Okay, so we're starting off here with vowels work. Now, let me just yeah, computer low on. Oh no, I've got plenty of memory, so it won't be the memory. It'd be more like the processing power. But yeah, something seems to be sort of slowing it up. But we will see. Okay, so starting off here, we've got Val has sent one of hers in, which is nice. She sent me a couple, and this is one of those ones though. It's somewhere between a thumbnail sketch and an actual drawing in a way. It's quite finished, but I think we can see here a nice use of a sort of circle composition. So we've got, you see there's a bit of a lag on it for some reason. So we come round here, then up here, and then round there, and round there. So a nice example of a circular composition. And it's also quite a strong black and white pattern, which is really good as well. So, she's managed to photograph it in a way there's a bit of light there. So I'm not going to do a complete tonal correction, but just say that that's a really good example of a nice circular composition. So well done, Val. And she's also sent me another one. And this one, there's quite a lot of lines here. Now remember, our eye likes to go across lines. So it's useful for them to sort of either zigzag or somehow take us towards our viewpoint. Here we've got a line coming here, line there. We've got a line coming up here. We've got a line coming there. Okay, so if I was just looking at that structure, okay, I don't know if these lines are helping us because they are a bit, perhaps there's too much variety there. They're not leading us in a direction that's perhaps very clear. And we have what appears to be often with this sort of a scene, a bit of a bit more, perhaps a little bit more light and dark. Okay, I think the tonal pattern might help you there, perhaps more dark in the shadow. Okay, but it should be very clear that it's perhaps of that house if that is your subject. Okay, right. So it keeps stopping. Yeah, me too. Maybe the record. Yeah, it might work later. So you can try. If not, I can always. Yeah, I say it's difficult to know whether it's the computer or so I think, let me see. I think, well, I'll push on for a bit more and you can tell me if it stays bad. Then at say 10:15, I'll make a decision. If it's still buffering, then we'll just stop it and I'll re-record it and then upload it another time. Okay, because there's some really good drawings that people have sent in. It would be a shame not to get the full value from that. So let's have a look here. The next one is so Val's reference here, which is very nice. So again, this would be good reference material. So because we have a nice frame here. The only thing here is you would ask yourself, is the building a focal point or is it the houses? Okay, so maybe if I was painting this, if you want your eye to go through, basically, you would probably want that house to be slightly. You would want the house to be a bit more in shadow, I think. So maybe. You see, like that. So if we put the house a bit more in shadow, then it's going to be easier for our eye to go through. Because say normally in a situation like this, what you're framing up is sort of really what you want your audience to go and have a look at. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. Okay, but that's nice reference photo, that, because again, good circular composition. Rupert Chitter. Yes, no, I've taken your stuff off Instagram this morning. Yep, so I've got it here, and I'll be saying something about that in a bit. So yeah, no problem. Okay, so next, Alison has given us these very nice little thumbnail studies, and of her lighthouse. And this is really nice. It's good to see, working through the problem, working through different, quick little thumbnails, but with a nice amount of shading. And one of them she turned into a little painting, which I'll show you in a minute. So this one here is where she's used the rule of thirds. Okay, so she's put the lighthouse on her top third, which is good. You can see though that on this one she's moved the lighthouse much more to the side. So at some point you get a little bit of a problem there where a strong vertical beside the side of the painting can sometimes be a bit discordant. But I think because it's broken up by the cloud mass, that's more, again, there's a point where it's interesting and there's a point where it becomes too interesting, but I think that works really nicely there. But you need to strongly perhaps balance it so that you don't pull all your attention to the lighthouse. The shading could still go a little bit more, you could just be a bit more thorough. So if we go into one of them here, So this was the one that became a painting. So from that rule of, you know, some, a little, a lot, I would say this one here is mostly grey. Okay, so if I go in a slightly smaller brush, okay, so that's being a bit more heavier with the tonal values. So you see, it's where the white grain of the paper shows through. So you see, if I darken that, we already get a slightly stronger effect, okay? Because it's clear. I'm more using this as a mid value as a dark, but we now have a, there we go, light to dark. And then the sky, now if we just skip ahead to what Alison actually produced. So she did this really nice painting here. Nice big sea, distant buildings here. The light on the water, which is good, bringing us in. So that's very nice. Possible. So on the thumbnail here, she's got the light on the building. So that I think also could have been quite a nice, if we were to go around these. So you will sometimes observe a sort of darkening at the horizon, and that can be, especially on perhaps an overcast day. As you can see, I'm getting quite a bit of lag there. So if we darken that sky slightly, then we create even more light. The buildings take on more contrast and pull the eye slightly, okay? So that's just, if you look, so if we, that's it. So I pushed the tonal values there a bit. So if we go back, you see, so I still think the tendency here is not to push. This one's a bit better. You've got dark, mid value, and light, okay? And I mean, they're still very nice little studies, but I would say still try to push your tonal values just a little bit. Make the darks really dark, the mid-tones nice and dense, and I think that will give you a better effect, okay? Okay, excellent. The L shape, I think if you're referring to this one, yep, L shape's good, that's right. So you've got this like dark foreground and dark there. So you're framing up this sort of area, this area of interest here. These are really nice. I like these simple dark and light patterns, just communicating. This one as well is very nice here. Yeah, I think that works well. So it's amazing how much you can communicate with a simple dark and light pattern. So yeah, and there's Alison's painting. So very nice that. This building here, that pulls the eye slightly because it's almost pure white, or it's very light, okay? So that's maybe not a problem, but it's just worth bearing in mind. So if I was... if we wanted to calm that down, let's say I took that little building out, okay? So what do you think of that? Does that make it any better? So there it is with a little white building. There it is without. So I don't know, maybe it makes it a bit simpler. And again here, this I would perhaps make that a little bit darker, that ship there, just so it sort of it does sort of pop out a little bit more. But no, it's very nice. So let's see what we've got next. So here's Ellie's. I think Ellie, I thought your drawings this week were excellent. Really, very, very good. Very nice, strong graphic sort of images. Let's see. So this works, again, this just works really well at a almost on a black and white level. It's just nice, strong diagonals. We've got our overlaps. So yeah, really nice design that. If you were turning this into a painting though, I would probably want to see a little bit more tonal sort of variation. So the sort of thing might be, again, if I was just to invent a tonal pattern, because again, there's so many different ways you could sort of do this, but let's use a bigger brush like that. Okay. Yeah, so what I'd be thinking here is actually I would probably darken this beach somewhat. Okay, if we darken that, then you've got the light on the water more so, okay? Then if we darken this line here, then again that helps create a bit more, that means that you've got a pattern of a dark, light, dark, and then if I was maybe a bit more tone at the top, just to pull the eye in slightly. So a little bit of a gradient there. And with the water, if you darken the water slightly, like that, then what you could do is that's not showing up that. Yeah, you could put little suggestions of waves on, but basically you've got something to play against, okay? So again, it's starting off with a really nice tonal composition, but yeah, I would push that a bit further, okay? So you've got your dark and light, so just think a bit more about your mid values, okay? So we turn up the contrast again slightly and you get more of that effect. I don't know what has got onto my computer. Maybe it's because I've got too many images on. So that was that one, which was really nice, I thought. Really good little design. Okay, and this one as well. So again, great composition with the birds on top of the posts here. Nice strong sort of verticals. So we've got our diagonal line up here. What's this? This is almost like, let's see if you can see this. So this is like, we've got a curve up here and it comes down there and then it comes down there. So I'd say that as an S. So Ellie can answer me whether that was a deliberate S there. Oh no. So can you hear me? Like someone, if you, oh, because there's a satellite delay, of course, but of course I can see your, it's moving again. Dear, oh dear. Oh well. Technology. So that's an S. So Ellie, you have to let me know whether that was a deliberate, but I like that. I think that works very nicely as a composition. Let's see. So with this, what I've done is I put a layer on, and that's added a proper mid value. So now what I can do is I can add some lights, okay? So if we go here, and we'll bring this. So you could say, well, where would be a good place for a light pattern? So maybe down here, okay, where the sun is. And then maybe a little bit of a suggestion. So that's put some light there. And then what you could do is you would have, a bit like in that demo piece I did, is you would have a sort of echo of that down there. It's thinking about it. Okay. Everyone said yes now. I think I've forgotten what the question was. I guess, is it still working? Well, I guess we'll find out at the end. I'll just have to, I'll push on and see how it goes. So there we see, you see I've darkened, I think that works quite nicely, doesn't it? But again, there are lots of other sort of tonal arrangements you could come up with, but I quite like this one where you get a smaller, you see, by doing that, I've basically reduced all that light, and now we've got mostly grey, some dark, and a little bit of a highlight, okay? So, and with this sort of level of tonal value, there we go, how about something like that? So that's more like a sunset or something like that. So that's in contrast. But you know, again, it has quite a sort of strong that's what I like about these ones, Ellie. They've got a very strong graphic quality to them. Now this one, let's have a look a bit further here. This is just a really nice drawing, I think. Yeah, it's just got a great sense of depth and variety of mark making. I like the shading on the sky, bringing us down, a bit of a gradient there. The only thing, so you've got a lot of light on this water here, okay? So like the other one, it might value from decreasing the amount of light in the overall composition. That's the only thing. And also this mass here, if that was a bit lighter, then your tree, okay, would create a bit more of an overlap. Do you see? So if you push the tree back, sorry, you darken the tree, and you would bring the tree forward a bit more. And I think that's what I would you're just trying to create as much depth as possible. Okay. It really is almost hopeless, this thing today. So I've lightened that, okay, I've lightened that bank, okay, and that's just, I'm just trying to create a bit more. What you would normally think of is these foreground darks being your darkest, then mid value, and just slowly allow those darks to get lighter as they recede from you. And that helps you communicate a sense of depth and sort of air in between you and it, okay. Very nice. Yeah, so it adds a graphic quality having that, and I like. It's also nice using the little oval. Again, it creates quite a nice sort of frame. So we like that. So very nice, Ellie. Thanks for sending those in. And now we get on to Phil. So Phil's done quite a bit. Look at these very nice little studies here. But, you know, I say if I was to sort of suggest anything, it would be, again, like, let's take this one down here. So if I just do, I mean, they all work well, but they all, they're working better at a linear quality than a tonal quality. And I think if there was anything, it's that you should all still try to work a bit more with, maybe it's your mid values. Okay, now if we take this one, okay, so that takes it down to a mid value. Now if I get my if I add my white, so where would you, so let's say now this, you've done this on toned paper, well, where would you add white for maximum sort of interest? So first of all, this building seems to, you know, if we bring this white like that, and I think that's a roof there. Okay, so that creates a bit of interest. That creates our light shape. So that now is easily our focal point. So what you might get then is under it, you would get a bit of reflection like this. And maybe even under this one. So that would work quite well. And then maybe you could have, but you wouldn't want this boat to be too light because it would sort of start to pull your eye too much. But something like that, I think, would work a little bit better. So maybe working on toned paper might be a good exercise for next week, just to help you really sort of get into this idea of making the tonal contrast just a bit more thorough. Okay. There are other. So with the dark roofs, maybe play that against a little bit of a lighter sky. Okay, but you see, the more light I add, perhaps have another one there, but something like that, I think. maybe even going a bit lighter here. So yeah, reducing the light in your composition is almost always a good thing to do. So I would consider perhaps, yeah, playing with the toned paper. So here's Phil's. So if we go, so this was the composition for the church. Okay. So let's have a look here. So so here we got the dark side of the church and the light side. Okay, so the light side is played against these trees, which is good. The only thing, and you can see what you think of this, but I just wonder whether the light side, it pulls our eye very much to this side of the composition. So there are a few things that might be done here. Okay, one of them, you often see this sort of thing. Darken the top. So instead of this being just a one flat wash, you can introduce a bit more of a gradient so it's darker at the top, because at the moment it's not really reading against the sky. Okay, if you want the sky to be light, I would make the top of it a bit darker. Oh no, it's completely... Yeah, there we go. There we go. So in this one, I think it was a slightly more widescreen version than this. So obviously this was, you moved from a design on a rectangle to a square. Okay, and as a result, you've sort of squished it up a little bit, perhaps. And another thing is, so the tree, often the tree acts like your foreground, and here you've got it nicely pointing into our church. In the painting, that doesn't happen quite as much. And what I would be thinking here is, yeah, I don't know what's going on with my computer, but if this was a bit darker, I'd make the tree a bit darker, and that would help push the it would help push the church back a bit. Same with perhaps this foreground area here. So again, that's not perhaps the best colour, but maybe a bit more dark here. So yeah, I'm just thinking about that. That's sort of what comes to mind with that tonal pattern. But yeah, I would say, yeah, just be a bit more thorough. So again, identify if you're going to have light catching the side of the building, then really you want the sky to be more of a mid value. Okay, so again, think about where your lights are. That's what I would suggest. And we've got another one from Phil. So this is acrylics, and this is the stump. So again, I like this. This works well. Tonally though, I think if we look at it, there's a lot of colour in there. if we go to black and white, so you can see that the stump is in sort of mid value. Actually, no, I think tonally it works quite well. You've got the light coming through the trees, so that's really nice. The difficulty though is that maybe if everything was a bit darker, you could maybe be a bit clearer about this subject. I think there's a few drawing issues within that. Also, the lighting is a little bit flat, so there seems to be some cast shadows from these trees, but they're painted a little bit flatly. So I would just think about the whole thing could do with a little bit more, you know, we talked about volume, scale, overlap, perspective. I think volume is the thing that you need to concentrate in this one, is giving things that three-dimensional feel. Okay, but you've also managed to capture different widths of trees, so that helps with scale and depth and these sorts of things. So yeah, I would keep going with the acrylics, but I think it's good to practice in different mediums if you can. They sort of cross over and inform each other. So this is Rupert Chitters. From Instagram. There we go. Perhaps we don't need it quite that big. So again, really nice. This one in the middle is just a really good example of distilling the tonal pattern. And even though it's just you know, a few darks and lights, a few zigzags, it really does create a basis for a nice little study, as this one is. So yeah, I really like that. Also really nice working with the unusual format. So I think working, again, giving yourself, obviously you've got the square and then rectangles, but you can, if you stretch the rectangles, either portrait or landscape, that can give you really nice effects. So yeah, I really like these. So this one is, this is probably the best, well, it's a very, you've minimized the lights more. So we've got light on top of the wood here, light there. Again, I think this middle distance is right to be kept in the light. So I might even darken those mountains a bit more. But no, it's a nice sort of zigzaggy composition. So that's good. Okay, and another of Rupert Chitters. So yeah, I like this. This looks like a sort of circle composition. You can tell me if that's right. So again, we've got nice scale, big to small. So that creates a feeling of depth in the water. Tonal values. Let's have a look. We'll try and... So if we add a mid value there, what I was thinking was, in the original, you see the rocks were light, and I think if you made the water light, so we got some, maybe if we made this light round here. Okay, then the rocks aren't sort of, they're not competing with the water. Okay. So something like that. For the foreground, and then maybe you could have smaller, just slightly lighter accents on the top of these far rocks here, just to make them stand out. And I think there are some other slightly lighter rocks back here. But you can see how powerful it is just to, again, take those lights away. I'm not sure if this is some sky up here, but again, maybe a little bit of light there. Taking the light away really sort of seems to, I think, make the composition a bit more dramatic. And normally you would do that, you would say, but you could probably add like a few, even maybe just a touch of light here. Just to give them a bit more form. But that's what sort of sprung to mind with that composition. So again, Rupachitta, you might consider working on some toned paper, or if you're going to work in graphite or charcoal, just layer, sort of rub some tone into the whole thing to begin with, and then at least you're going to be a bit more deliberate in taking the lights out and choosing where to put those lights for maximum impact. Okay, so let's see. Next we are on to Stuart. So Stuart's done a few nice ones. Again, same, basically the advice that I've given so far, Stuart, applies here, which is more mid-value. So again, it's a nice light and dark pattern, but let's see if we... Yeah, so I would basically, in this one, I think I would just make the light on the ground could be a bit darker, okay? So if you made that darker, then let's say you want this light to hit the post or this fence. Well, that's then got a mid value to play against. Okay, so we darken that all up. So you see now it creates more of a, you've definitely got a sky and you've got the land, so it's a bit clearer tonally, okay. And then maybe I would sort of push those back. The trees perhaps make them not quite as dark as the foreground tree. Let's paused again, paused for thought. Yeah, so a little bit, maybe a bit darker at the top there. So again, same issue, is just try and reduce the amount of light in your composition, and I think you'll get a more powerful effect. So that's giving a rather dramatic stormy sky, but again, that leaves the light down near the horizon, which might be better, okay? Yeah, it shouldn't really be thinking about this, so perhaps next time I'll just make sure I reset the computer. Something seems to be sort of slowing it down. So here we can see the rule of thirds, very nicely sort of demonstrated. One thing that sort of jumps to mind with this, again, you probably know what I'm going to say now, but so this lighthouse here, if you made this all, instead of having light on it, actually made it a darker mass, okay, like that, then it's going to push the background back a bit more further, okay. So I think this is one of these examples of, it's quite a literal interpretation of the rule of thirds. So you remember, ultimately what you're going to be looking to is to disguise what you're up to with this rule. But I think this works nicely. You'll see though that you've got this. So you've got 1, 2, 3. If anything, it's just 2 regular. Now, I did this before and I managed to get away with it, but let's see if I can, if we, no, I think that's going to be a bit difficult to do. Because it's going to leave that hole there. But what I would, bear with me. Yeah, so there's a rule of thirds. There's also, though, you can break things up into fifths, okay? So let's, I don't know what it's up to now. It's having a think. Yeah, so you've got 1, 2, 3, but you could break either the whole canvas up into 5, or you could break one of your segments up here into 5 as well. 5 and 3s, 1s are thought of as good numbers in composition, okay? And then that might give you just a few more little suggestions of options where you could put, so you can put one object using the rule of thirds and then another object using fifths, okay? And so like, it's really frustrating today. I don't know what's going on with this. Normally it's just, okay. So yeah, here we go. So 1, 2. So imagine we had this, and if we break this up into 5, let's say you've got 1 there, 1 there, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's roughly fifths. So that would also give you potentially, so like if I put 1 on this line, then you've got perhaps a few more unequal divisions. You see, we're sort of adding a bit more variety. So something like that, and avoiding perhaps just repeating the third. You don't want perhaps a good thing in each focal point. I guess that's the idea. So like this one, if we divide this, we could divide this bit into 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then this one, 1, 2, 3. So maybe here. We put a bird or something like that. Okay, that's not very good, but you get the idea. So thirds and fifths, you can break up spaces progressively, and that can give you suggestions of where it might work compositionally. So that's something to bear in mind. Circle composition here. So yeah, we can see that. That's again, I think this works really nicely. This again, just make the tones a bit more simple maybe. We could establish this as a dark shape and that a dark shape. You've got a boat framed up there with a tower, bringing the eye round. So I think that's a very nice little compositional study. And here Stuart's done a couple of paintings. Oh. Okay, so this one is very it's high saturation. Okay, so if I was to let's see, I can actually adjust the saturation on here. So between, there's very saturated, okay, and there's desaturated. So most people have a place where they enjoy their work. You know, some people like very high saturated palettes. Personally, if you I prefer a slightly desaturated approach. So let's say if we take this here, it's going to look a bit more naturalistic, okay? And then if you did want to have areas of more saturation, at least they've got more greys to play against, okay? So saturated is when basically your pigments have come almost straight from the tube without any mixing. And nature, apart from flowers and blue skies, it tends to be ever so slightly grayer than you might imagine, okay? So I would perhaps just work on that with your colour mixing, Stuart. I think that would be good. But no, it's a nice little study and step in the right direction. And here we have another one, a mountain scene. Okay, so I've been working on a subject a bit similar myself this week. And this, I think, is very nice little painting. Yeah, so that works well. Tonally, you know, you've got light at the top, and if we do look at it under black and white, this area is a little bit confused, so it could do with some clearer lights and darks. That would be my only suggestion there, okay? But overall, you know, we've got a clear mountain and a bit of a gradient in the sky, so that's not too much of a problem. But yeah, that's a nice painting, that. Oh, and last but not least, we've got Teresa. Teresa's given us quite a few to look through. So here we go, look at this. This is good, isn't it? So that is a great example of a tonal, you know, how simple, light and dark. You've got atmosphere. So we can look at the reference material. I think there's the reference material. And again, you've got a possible great painting there. L-shaped composition, yeah. So you've got the tree coming down and the dark foreground, and that's sort of giving us our framing up that sun there. But I think that works very nicely, just because again it suggests all that depth and atmosphere. Good, there we go. Bright colours. What's that? Let's see. Yeah, so again, softer edges, a few sharper edges on the tree though, but again, yeah, that's very nice study, Teresa, like that. Now, did she give me the reference? So this is, yeah, so between Shingle Street and Butley, looking towards Orford. So here's our reference. Pillboxes, yeah, light and dark sequences. So it's definitely a good one. I'll tell you what, this was an idea that occurred to me looking at it, which was so if you took this horizon, okay, it's a bit skewed. So if that was all a bit darker, say, like that. Now, obviously, that's a bit skewed there, but you can see by darkening the sky, we put our light on the land, okay? And then what I might also have done is... Okay. So keeping the light and dark pattern, but if we reduce the light in the foreground a bit, let's see, yeah, so that was all quite dark there. So darkening all that a bit, and then so that means that the lights take it, our eye moves past the darks and towards the lights in the distance. Okay, so we reserve the lights more for the middle distance and the far distance. Okay, and that's quite a nice device just to take our eye through. But and we've got nice little details there as well. So those are just some suggestions, but yeah, if you darken the sky, you can do it in a way like that, and it's still going to look quite natural, but the light is now hitting the ground. And I do that because if you look at this one, it's like the lights here are almost lighter than this bluey grey sky. Okay, and you could reserve even the lightest lights for those pillboxes. So similar idea is lessen your amount of light in your composition and make the lights work for you in terms of bringing your eye in. Okay, another good one here. Let's see, there's the reference. Okay, Hollesley, very nice. That's a very difficult effect to get the this thing of the light radiating out from the sun. It's quite, I would say it's quite difficult to do that in a painting and for it to read in a way that looks naturalistic. So lighter sky at the top apart from the sun itself. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, no, so when I'm looking at a picture like this, I'd be thinking, there's my light, which is the sun. So that basically means that the sky I would be thinking as of a mid value, and the trees as dark, or in this case, they're slightly lighter. Ooh. That's taken us. Okay, so yeah, so I would think of, we'll just do it just so you can see. So if we now get that light. So that is that's really how I think of the composition, more so than because then that really focuses, you know, by bringing this down tonally, it makes it very clear that this is our light source. Okay, and then so that's how I would think of it. Okay, so you're actually treating the sky more like a mid-tone than a light there. Okay, and here we've got some reference material. This is more of Teresa's playing with the rule of thirds here. So you can see each one creates a slightly different effect. Which one do we like? This one's very central. This is nice. I think probably that might be the one I like the most, because I think I prefer it when you have your focal point on the, what's this, the right side, okay, because we've got a long line in. Here we basically come up to our focal point a bit too quickly, and there's not perhaps as much interest back here. So she's then taken these are really good. So if I just increase the contrast. So as you can see, she's been quite thorough with her tonal values there, is that the light is definitely light and the mid-tones are definitely mid-tone. And perhaps not so much this one, but they benefit from a reduction of the amount of light in the compositions. It's one of the themes that seems to have emerged here. So yeah, they're good little workings through, and this one as well. So yeah, looking at thirds. I think that one is the one I like. There we go. You can see the trouble with the square one is it's a bit like a bullseye. We just basically go into the middle, and it's harder to encourage the eye to then sort of search around the composition. And this is one of Teresa's pastel interpretations of it. So as you can see, very incredible effect of realism here. And yeah, I think it's very nice. Overall, I mean, it's very, there's a lot of light in the composition. So we've got lots of light in with these flowers and the distance. My inclination might have been just to lower the light value slightly. Bring that down a bit. Okay. But this is good. I think these foreground flowers work very nicely, bringing our eye through. But you have to think about these white flowers. When they're in shadow, they become slightly bluer. It's a bit like white fabric. You know, you get a great effect, or a white building. Slightly yellower orange in the lights, slightly cooler in the shadows. So you may have got a little bit more of that effect. So you could have suggested a bit more of the light things being in shadow by using a bit of blue, warm and cool, like orange and blue. Okay, but no, very nice study that. And oh, that's vowels. So where are we? Is that everything? Oh yeah. So here's another one of Teresa's in oils. So again, what I would say is that in this painting, it feels to me ever so slightly that Teresa, you might have lost your original tonal pattern. Okay, because if we look at it under black and white, yeah, black and white, you can see the effect is lost somewhat. In your I've lost it now, but in your pastel version, you kept the tonal pattern. There it is. Yeah, you kept the tones more easily. So I think you want to try and do what you're doing in pastels, but try and do it with oils. So draw the thing out, lay down your mid value, and then work into it bit by bit. Because I can see here the paint obviously isn't perhaps, the paint looks quite thick in areas, and of course the thicker you paint, the harder it is then to correct and work with things. Okay, but no, I think it's nice. Again, you pulled some of the you don't want these things to be too discreet, so normally you have bits of grass, as you've got here, growing in here, and some of this purple, even though it's a bit odd, is to try and pick it up in perhaps other parts of the composition, and that can just unify the different areas. Good. Okay, so I think that's everyone's today. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's a really nice crop of work this week. I say I have been busy doing some paintings, but I can't reveal them at the moment. Lindsay, if she's watching, hi Lindsay, had a very good question about my master copy. And what she was saying is because I'd used reference but changed the light source, and as she's looked at a lot of these magazines and painting shows, and she was asking me about the shadows. Should the shadows have been different? And she does make a really good point, which is that you need to think about when you have a light source in a painting and you try to change it, you're going to be inventing the light source, and so you have to think about the shadows as well. And I think I managed to get away with it. There are certain situations where you won't get strong cast shadows. If there's lots of ambient light around, like in the sky and stuff, you won't get strong, crisp cast shadows. So that would be my excuse anyway. But it's definitely something to bear in mind. You need to keep your lighting consistent, okay, and see what works. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, hopefully Lindsay's out there somewhere. Anyway, so there we go, folks. Hope you enjoyed that, and it wasn't too distorted. I'll have to see what happens in the review. But there we go. So for those of you that are doing Zoom, I'll take 10 minutes break just to get my breath back. So let's say 20 past 11 we'll have Zoom. Okay, anyway, so I'll see you next week for some more tuition and some demos. Okay, so I'll see you soon.